Here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
Boldly go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream,
To be given the rights of a human being, to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities. By any means necessary.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You've certainly come to the right place.
Let's have a conversation, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, by the way, this is the Benjamin Dixon Show, but let's have a conversation on this Wednesday, August 26, 2013. I have a show jam-packed with stuff, important stuff. And if you don't have time to listen to the entire show, and you're listening after the fact, skip after the commercials. I try to break everything down by segments. I have yet to work it into my workflow to cut up the videos because for the most part, I'm a one-man show with the exception of my producers who help book guests. Notwithstanding all that, skip to if you want to hear about Ben Carson, go to the next commercial. If you want to hear about how Donald Trump is an asshole, go to the last segment or something to that effect. But more importantly than all of that, I just got a chance to read last night the article by Nate Silver, and it was an article of a conversation that he was having with his 538 staff, dealing with how Bernie Sanders can win. And I want to unpack that article just a little bit, but I want to talk about what they didn't talk about. They gave a lot of different scenarios of how Bernie Sanders could win, how he could pick up momentum, but even in spite of having the momentum, he would need Hillary Clinton to have some type of scandal bigger than the email controversy, which should be dying out on the Democratic political spectrum because it's come out from the State Department that she broke no policy. So that controversy on the Democratic side should be just about, on the progressive side, should be just about all dead. I don't imagine Bernie Sanders or Martin O'Malley keeping that zombie alive, but guarantee that the conservatives, Republicans, they will. So saving this controversy coming out, and this is from Nate Silver and the 538 blog, who a lot of people look to as an oracle. I just look to him as a number cruncher who's pretty accurate. He's accurate with his estimates. So I don't see him as an oracle. I just see him as a really smart guy who knows how to run numbers correctly. But he's saying that unless Hillary Clinton has some type of controversy, unless Joe Biden gets in the race, unless Bernie Sanders starts just performing better with African Americans, all those forces must combine for him to have a chance to win. And at the end of the article, they left it at Bernie Sanders it has about a 2%. One guy estimated a 2% chance of winning, and the other, Nate Silver, I believe, left it at 5% chance of winning. Okay, we need to have a conversation because I absolutely despise any sense of inevitability, especially when it comes to our political leaders. And there are some things that he says, Nate Silver says, that might happen, but he doesn't think will happen, particularly with regard to the African-American vote. But before I even go to the African-American vote, one of the things that I noticed that they didn't really discuss was, and they mentioned it, but they didn't unpack it. They mentioned the fact that more Democrats are self-identifying as liberals than ever before. And I presume the number was at 44%. And I imagine that the number would be even higher if you ask them who self-identifies as progressives. One of the things that I noticed that we have a problem with is the establishment in the Democratic Party. Democrats are cowards. I'm sorry. The establishment of the Democratic Party, they're simply cowards, and they don't want to be, they're still afraid of being true progressives. They're still afraid of being called a liberal. They're still afraid of of the pejorative, as I put my quotation marks up for those listening on the radio, quote unquote, pejorative of socialism. They have yet, and they are behind the curve, because where the rest of us are fully aware of the positive nature of progressivism, the effective nature of progressive policies and liberalism, and the fact that our country has been so propagandized over the last 30 years that we've been taught that the thing that has worked in the past was actually a failure, and that the things that actually failed in the past is what we need to do to succeed, even though those things that they propagandized us with have consistently led to crashes in the economy, led to recessions, led to just all types of the shrinking of the middle class. We've been told, taught, and terrified to think anything outside of the 1981 Ronald Reagan paradigm. We've been punked. We've been chumped. And the establishment part of the party of progressivism are no longer even progressives. They are scared. They are scared to be progressives. They're scared to be liberals, and they're scared to be to move any way away from being a moderate, because they think the only type of Democrat, the only type of progressive that's palatable in the American polity right now are moderates. What they don't realize is that we've swung so far to the right that now people are saying, you know what, to hell with what everyone else thinks. To hell with if you think I'm a socialist. You don't even know how to define a socialist. Some of you don't even know how to spell socialist, right? So to hell with all that. If our policies are better, and you constantly have to go back to democratic and progressive policies to undo the damage that Republicans have done throughout American history, then call me whatever the hell you want to call me. But we don't have an establishment that has that type of fortitude. We have an establishment that is essentially cowards. Now, I said all of that to say in regard to Bernie Sanders. I think Bernie Sanders' route to win is not necessarily waiting on Hillary Clinton to have a scandal. The route for Bernie Sanders to win is to expose Hillary Clinton to be afraid to be a progressive, to be a true progressive. If she cannot stand up, and then I'll get to the African-American vote, because there's some things that he needs to conscientiously and systemically do on a regular basis from now until the election to make sure that he starts acquiring the African-American vote. I'll get there in a second. But the first thing I want to put at the top is that he needs to just continue to expose Hillary Clinton to be, she's not even a blue dog Democrat. She is a Washington establishment. And so she may as well, she's the status quo. This is a campaign, and this is not even a negative ad. This is what he should run. If you want things to remain the same, vote for Hillary. That's not an attack ad. That's simply the truth. Hillary Clinton is status quo. Jeb Bush is status quo. We may as well have Jeb or Hillary. It doesn't matter. It would be the status quo. But the establishment underneath them, the party chairmen, the local caucus members, the local political leaders, they are so afraid of progressivism, even though they know in their mind that it is better than anything conservatism has ever offered. But they are cowards. And unless we start, I don't know, should we hold them by the hand and help bring them to the light and show them and show them the data, show them that progressivism actually has worked and will work and can work even better if we start undoing some of the damage that has been done? Do we carry them by the hand, or do we just mollywop them, slap them upside the head and say, get out of the way because you're holding us up? One of the things that Nate Silver didn't discuss in that article was the fact that if Bernie Sanders controls the national economic conversation completely, delegitimizes everyone else's ideas because they are not legitimate. They are a repeat, a recycling of the same thing that got us into the mess in 2007, 2008. Bernie Sanders needs to own the economic conversation. Right now, it's like he's the outsider on the economic conversation, and he needs to absolutely own it. And I know that's by virtue, not by virtue of what he's saying, because he could say the same thing. It's by virtue of the media not portraying it correctly. But here's the thing: when you have people with a left-leaning affiliation refer to Bernie Sanders as a socialist, they're not referring to him in a democratic socialist manner. They're referring to him in a pejorative sense, as an insult, as something that we should be afraid of. And so I think Bernie Sanders and his team, they have to completely obliterate that pejorative of socialist and help America to understand relentlessly. I mean, just pound with ads that America has always been, to a certain degree, socialist. We have always engaged in socialist tactics and policies. Every time we redistribute wealth to accomplish anything, our army, our police, our schools, all of those are socialized. And we have socialism right now that distributes wealth to the top and not to the bottom. Here's the thing. We do not have to convince Republicans of that, because we will never convince them of that. We have to convince our own progressives of that. We have to convince the establishment of that. And we have to convince them that they no longer, they should not be afraid of being called a socialist. That they're running from the ghost of Rush Limbaugh. They're running from the ghost of Sean Hannity and all of the work that they did in 2000. I mean, it's been going on for a long time, but they concentrated it with Barack Obama, right? They put all their efforts into making him a socialist, communist, Maoist, fascist, Leninist, right? Which makes no political philosophy sense at all. But I digress. We're running from the specter of what they did in 2008, 2007, 2008. And they're not even looking and paying attention that now, according to Gallup, more Democrats identify as liberals than ever before. Our work doesn't have to be to change the minds of the nation to win, for Bernie Sanders to win. Our work has to be to change the mind of the establishment, or to let the establishment know that if they don't get it together, that we can move them out of office. We may not be able to. Here's the thing. We may not, with a 5% chance. And I don't think that's concrete. I think that was just a rough estimate. But when Nate Silver crunches numbers, there's some validity to it. You know, with a 5% chance, there's a good chance that we may not overcome this hurdle. So we may not get the national nomination. That doesn't mean we don't try like hell. And I'm saying we, like I'm on his team, but I'm just saying as a progressive, that's tired of the paradigm being set in the same direction that it was set 35 years ago. Right. So that's why I say we, but let me get back on topic. We have to let them know that even though we may not get the nomination, we can change the entire hierarchy of the Democratic Party through and through. All the way through. So if you are establishment and you are a coward and you are afraid to be a progressive, afraid to be a liberal, then you don't need to be in any position that has the D by it, period. You don't, because you're no better than a Republican at all. If all you're going to do and all you are brave enough to do is to maintain the status quo, then you are of no use to anyone who is a progressive, period. Now, I love Barack Obama, supported him, like some of the things he's done, but at this point, economically, we're status quo. Bill Clinton kept us at the status quo. And at some point, we have to wake up and say, either we are going to be progressive, or we might as well just fold up shop and call it a day and just merge and just have a one-party system, which essentially, if you look at the effects, the economic changes in America, we're pretty much a one-party system that has a difference of 3%. 3% difference on taxes, on taxations, on certain margin, on certain tax groups. That's the difference. There is no significant. That's what we argue about. We don't argue about whether or not the tax rate should be more progressive and take the top rates back up to, let's say, 40% or 50%. God forbid, nobody's ever going back to 70%. when it was at 70%, we had the greatest growth. We had the greatest growth of the middle class. Our GDP grew. You know, we're never going back to that point. But right now, we're arguing over 3 to 4 to 5% percentage points. That's the only difference economically between a Republican and a Democrat right now. And so what I'm saying Bernie Sanders has to do to win, to overcome these insurmountable odds that Nate Silver and his crew gives them, what we have to do is to lay it all on the table with the establishment and call them out and display to the people who are the voters, right? To the voters, that you have unique differences and what's the word I'm looking for? Not only differences, but priorities. Your priorities are totally different than that of the Democratic establishment. And we need to convince all of those voters that when they throw around the word socialism, it is not a pejorative. It is not something to be scared of. It is not something, it needs to just be unpacked so much more. A massive campaign has to take place to help progressives. I think that's the whole essence of what I'm trying to say. The problem is with so-called progressives who are actually just blue dog Democrats, may as well be Republicans, economically speaking. Great, we got social change. I appreciate social change, but we need economic change at this point. We need economic change because the money that I spend out in taxes, the check that I write every month to pay off my tax debt to the IRS, you know, I get much of nothing in my income bracket for that. Whereas in other countries, I could at least get childcare, right? I don't even get childcare for that. I not only pay the government so much every month, I have to pay, in other countries, I wouldn't have to write a mortgage check every month for childcare. You know, help people understand in very tangible terms the things that we should be getting for our taxes that we are currently paying. And that's the first step. And then help them to understand that welfare has always been around. And right now it's just going to the corporations. I know that we're saying these things. I'm not saying that Bernie Sanders isn't saying these things. But what I'm saying is that we have to convince with a massive campaign our own voters. And I think what we've done is we're trying to convince and trying to engage in debates with conservatives when that's a lost cause. We absolutely have to do this with our own voters and with the establishment. Man, we have to. If we don't change the face of the establishment, we will never change the face of the nation. You can quote me on that one. All right. And so I'm just reading this article and I didn't get to the meat of it until this morning. And then they were talking about the African-American vote. Where am I on time? Okay, I'm good on time. With regards to the African-American vote, let's just put this out here up front. Hillary Clinton has done nothing whatsoever at all to deserve one African-American vote. Now, somebody come and challenge me on that. I'm waiting. 857-600-0518. However, Hillary Clinton is polling at 70% in the minority vote. Bernie Sanders is only getting 10% of the minority vote. That is because of the momentum of apathy, which is kind of contradictory, but I'll unpack it in a second. It's the momentum of apathy when you're not active and when you don't really, you don't really care or you don't have any vested interest in what's going on and you're not noticing any of the political and economic shifts in society, societal shifts, and you're just picking up the phone and they ask you about Hillary Clinton, you recognize the name and you say, okay, Hillary Clinton. The problem with that is that same mentality will translate into the voting booth unless an outside force comes in and shakes them and wakes them up. Now, this is true about all of the party, but this is particularly true about the black vote because Hillary Clinton has done jack to get the black vote. Yet she has it locked up as though she was Nelson Mandela. Here's what Bernie needs to do with the black vote. First of all, Black Lives Matter. I'm just going to say it, to hell with it. Forget about Black Lives Matter, the organization, because they're not going to endorse anybody. And maybe rightfully so. I would, if I was advising them, I would say don't endorse anyone because you need to be able to access the person who wins. You don't want to be on the shit list of whoever wins, right? So, you know, strategically, it's not a bad thing. But then also they're caught up in hearing themselves talk right now. Even the people who put out the 10 points was not Black Lives Matter. It was Campaign Zero, Operation Zero, Campaign Zero, a separate organization. So forget about getting any endorsement from Black Lives Matter. However, you still need to communicate in the language of Black Lives Matter. Don't talk about white supremacy and systemic racism in order to get the support and the love of Black Lives Matter. Forget about that. You're never going to get it. Just wipe it out of your mind. Speak about white supremacy and systemic racism because it's something that needs to be spoken about, and then target the establishment Blacks. Establishment Black people, whatever. African Americans. I'm just doing straight political strategy this morning. So if I say something that's politically incorrect, so what? Go to hell. All right. Target the establishment African American base that is in bed with Hillary Clinton, not in bed because they, you know, because they're in love with her. They're in bed because they woke up and they were in bed with her and they just stayed there, right? It's kind of like, oh, well, I slept with this horribly looking person last night. I might as well stay here. That's why the establishment Black Democrats are in bed with Hillary Clinton right now. Bernie Sanders needs to speak the language of Black Lives Matter, but don't you guys stop tweeting them, stop trying to convince them, because they're not the establishment and they're not going to endorse anybody anyway. You need to focus on African American churches. I'm giving this for free, man. I need to be getting paid for this. This advice that I'm giving right now, I need to get paid for it because it's the truth. African American churches, Christian churches, represent the vast majority of the African American vote, especially those that identify as Democrat. Now you have a handful of churches that are crazy evangelicals who are just as Republican as Westboro Baptist, right? I'm not talking about the crazies. I'm talking about the mentally capable ones. All right. So target the African American churches, and Bernie Sanders needs to go to those churches. 212, you can call back. I missed you. Bernie Sanders needs to go every Sunday from here until the election. After he does his Meet the Press interview, or forget about the Meet the Press interview, he needs to be inside of an African American church talking about white supremacy, systemic racism, and then pivot over into his economic revolution. Because we absolutely know that there is a problem with our economic system. And if you talk economics to the establishment Blacks in the Democratic Party, we are going to be on board with that. But you cannot negate, you cannot go to a Black setting because the media will be there. You cannot go there and not speak about systemic racism, and you can't not talk about white supremacy. You would have thought I had coffee this morning, guys. I'm sorry. I'm just really, really passionate about tearing down an establishment that is just as bland as the Republicans, right? The status quo is what is the problem. And we cannot keep allowing the status quo to have control over the party. Now, Bernie Sanders, he absolutely needs to go to Black churches every Sunday from here until go to 2 or 3 churches a Sunday. Speak about white supremacy, speak about Sandra Bland, and speak about systemic racism, speak about, speak about all of the injustices that occur on a week to week. You don't even have to bring up Sandra Bland anymore because there are like 300 cases since Sandra Bland. Speak about that and then hard pivot into your economic revolution, because that is what we want to hear too. Trust me, if I'm in church and you talk about helping me get childcare with my taxes versus sending my taxes to a oil company, I'm going to say amen, hallelujah. Trust me. That is where the establishment Black vote is. That is where Hillary's operatives are going right now. That is absolutely who Bernie Sanders must target. Trust me, I know. I worked in a black church for almost 16 years, multiple black churches, from a very small storefront church to a pretty like 4,000 member church. You know, that's the average size. That's not a mega church, but that is where you reach those people who woke up and said, well, I guess we're going to, Hillary Clinton, hey, well, there she is. I guess Hillary's next. That's where you find those people, and you help them to understand that voting for Hillary is the same as voting for Jeb Bush, economically speaking, with a variation of 3 percentage points. That's it. I mean, that's the only difference between Barack Obama, that we let the Bush tax cuts expire. Socially, of course, there's a difference. All right, guys, I know if you get a Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton, that socially it is totally night and day. I get it. But economically, Hillary is talking. Hillary is talking about the middle class. Well, hell, the Republicans are talking about the middle class. All right, let me slow down. I still have a whole lot more. I still have to get to Ben Carson, Donald Trump, and I got a phone call on the line. So let me take a pause and not drink any more coffee. We'll be back after this break. When I come back, I'm going to take this call. You can join the conversation as well. 857-600-0518. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. And I'm just we got to shake it up. That's just what I'm saying. We just have to shake up the establishment. And this is how you do it. Team Sanders, feel the burn. This is how you do it. And I'm giving it to you for free. The bill will be in the mail. We'll be back after this.
When you're ready to lose weight, why count, track, and worry over every meal? Jenny Craig makes it simple. Just walk into a neighborhood Jenny Craig center or give us a call. You'll meet your dedicated personal consultant who helps you reach your goals. Together, you'll pick out delicious Jenny Craig foods that you'll love and design a menu that fits your life. And the best part is that you can get started losing weight right away. Don't wait any longer to take advantage of our best offer ever. Call 1-800-JENNY20 or visit jennycraig.com.
This is the sound of salmonella gyrating on your undercooked chicken. And it looks like Mom might be taking it out a little early. Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. So use a thermometer to cook each type of meat to the right temperature. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
On the next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
I'm making beef sliders for my friend Sandy. Nana taught me to always pull meat off the grill early so it's extra juicy.
Use a food thermometer to ensure ground beef is 160 degrees, or you could make people really sick. Sandy didn't think twice about the slider she ate until yoga class, when a nasty case of food poisoning turned her downward-facing dog into upward-moving lunch. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov and learn the steps Maria unwittingly leaves out. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer.
Warm fleece on a cool day. I want to be a bike that races around the country.
I want to be a bench on a forest trail.
When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
Yep. All right. I keep telling myself to cut that music short and then never get around to it. Caller, what is your name, comment, and or question? And thank you for your patience.
Hi, good morning, Benjamin. How are you? This is Philly the Cat again. I'm calling from New York. And I just wanted to tell you that your advice that you're giving out this morning is just really priceless, especially on strategy with the with Bernie Sanders and the Democrats. You know, I really don't understand why people always say that progressives can't win. Mm-hmm. It's such a self-defeatist argument because we want to be progressives, right?
Right.
We want the country to move forward. That is, if we weren't moving forward, we'd still be back in the 1800s ideologically as well as socially. So we want to be progressive. I don't know why Democrats are scared of the word liberal, progressive, socialism. It's very confusing to me.
It's
especially for people who are supposed to be so smart and like to be part of the elite intellectual class. I don't get why they allow these arguments in opposition to socialism continue to go on.
It's because, you know what, you've already said it. You said that they are afraid, and it's cowardice. It's just, it is when you have a person like Rush Limbaugh who has 20 million listeners every single morning, and he's shouting down their throats that socialism is evil, even though socialism is going on, it's just going towards the top 1% in corporations.
Exactly.
Then you get politicians who are trying to keep their positions in office, and they are afraid, so they become more moderate. So,
and I think you just hit the nail on the head right there. Unfortunately, the corruption and the collusion between the political class and the business class, and particularly the Black establishment class, has gotten so out of control, and they basically sold the people out.
Absolutely.
And they've done it for personal wealth, personal power. And I'm very, like in New York, we had Yankee Stadium. Now everyone knows the Yankees. They're the richest baseball league in the country. I mean, they're signing players for multi-million dollar contracts. Yet we gave them about $300 million to build a stadium. Why? The people in the surrounding area, they can't even go to that stadium. A ticket is about $100. If you have a family, you're spending about $500 to see a baseball game there.
Yeah.
And yet people say we don't want socialism. Well, what was that? They can afford to build a stadium.
Exactly.
Why are we giving them tax subsidies and also incentives and tax credits and all this kind of stuff to build a stadium? And then they throw it up in our faces like Donald Trump and talk about how rich they are.
Right.
Not realizing that these people are living off the system. And that's kind of what I feel about Hillary Clinton too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That they're just manipulating the system, using the system. Oh, by the way, I know why Blacks support her. Because her husband played the saxophone on Arsenio Hall.
No. I'm going to stop you there. I remember him playing.
It goes all the way back to that.
It does
It goes
go back.
all the way back to that, because that was the moment when Black America said, oh, we've got a Black president.
Yeah.
And now we've embraced him in such a way, not realizing that the policies that came out of the Clintons, the policies were devastating to the Black community.
Absolutely. I don't disagree with you there.
It tore up communities.
Yeah.
And the churches did nothing in the meantime. They just sat back, let it happen, got in bed with the Clintons because he came in church and ate fried chicken. And someone would say,
Politicat, you're killing me. You're killing me. Listen, I agree with 90%, 99% of your assessment. But I will say this, it's with regard to the Clintons, it is more, to me, it's more like you got in bed with somebody and that person changed over the years, or they showed who they really were, and you were just so comfortable with them that you didn't do what it was necessary to get out of that relationship. That's what's going on with the Clintons, and that's why Hillary has 70% of the vote. Yeah, he played the saxophone, but you know what? African Americans have been voting against the Republican Party for many years, so much more than we've been voting for the Democratic Party. So it's like we got in bed with them because the alternative was to stay with George H.W. Bush. And so it's easy.
Well, they're both playing the fear game.
Right. They're both playing the fear game, and they're both doing, but I want you to hear this clearly. You hit something on the head and you were getting ready to go there. And I actually have a couple other calls. Politicat, thank you so much for your call. You have to realize the key, you said it, but you kind of moved past it. The key is the Black church. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton knew how to work the Black church. Barack Obama knew how to work the Black church, but he didn't have to work it as much because quite frankly, we were going to support him, not anyways, but we were going to support him. We had a natural predilection to support him because of the historical moment that it was and the volumes that it spoke. It was like the culmination of King's dream, right? At the time, and then we realized we just got another Bill Clinton, essentially, economically speaking. All right. And so back to, actually, let me go to here because I mentioned this in my title. I want to talk about Okay, I got a couple of good comments coming in, and I'll read them across. I want to talk about Cornel West. He gave his endorsement on yesterday of Bernie Sanders. And here he says, I endorse Bernie Sanders because he is a long distance runner with integrity in the struggle for justice for over 50 years. My endorsement of Brother Bernie is not a downplaying of the immorality and the ugly. Well, I'll go into that one another time. This is the one I want to read. Now is the time for his prophetic voice to be heard across our crisis-ridden country. We will push him, speaking of Bernie Sanders, we will push him with integrity toward a comprehensive vision for a freedom for all. Bernie Sanders for president. That is Cornel West speaking about Bernie Sanders
in the race right now. Brother Bernie Sanders talking about Wall Street.
That's who he is now, has now come out and endorsed. Okay. So to summarize briefly what, just to give the highlight points, this is what Bernie needs to do to win. And somebody asked, how is Bernie going to do this when funding is low? Bernie does not have the big donors that Hillary Clinton has. But that doesn't necessarily mean it can't be done. There's too much power in small donors and the narrative of small donors. And the fact that he's done most of everything right now, the majority, the lion's share of everything he's raised has been with small donations. That narrative in itself can lead to more small donations. And so he needs the donations and he has to get it to run these campaigns. I get that. But there are also plenty of other ways to get the word out. And I don't want to sound like a overnight marketing person, but the power of social media really genuinely and the power of the Feel the Burn crowd. You guys have a legion of people who can command a narrative. And I think the problem has been that you've tried to convince the Black Lives Matter crowd. And what I'm saying is, with regard to the African-American vote, listen to the language of Black Lives Matter, because it is accurate, it's true, it's important, and it's relevant, and you cannot dismiss it. If you do, you dismiss it to your peril. Your support in the Black community will go from 10% to 1%, right? Listen to them, but don't try to convince them of anything. Don't try to get their endorsement. Don't try to get them to tweet out anything positive about Bernie. Nothing whatsoever, because you're not going to win them. They do not represent the Black establishment. That's one bit of advice that Nate Silver gave that I think is apropos. He said, stop confusing media figures and people with large Twitter followers as the establishment, because they're not. The Black vote that is overwhelmingly in bed with Hillary Clinton, most of them don't even have a Twitter account. They're middle-aged to late-age African Americans, and they get all their information either off of Politics Nation with Al Sharpton, or they're getting it from their pastor on Sunday morning. And then the rest of the time, they're going to work, doing what they have to do for their life. If you want to reach the African-American vote, go to the Black church every single Sunday and talk about systemic racism, talk about white supremacy, and then pivot on the connections between white supremacy and economic exploitation. You kill two birds with one stone. You do that every single Sunday. If you could do it on a Wednesday night, do it on a Wednesday night, but you do it every week between now and the vote and the primaries, and I guarantee you that he will knock that 70% down to about 50, 40, 45. And Hillary Clinton will not have the lion's share of the African-American vote. He has to do that. All right. Anyone else wants to join the conversation? I missed a call, 857-600-0518. You can call back in. That being said, since I'm on Black Lives Matter, let me deal with Ben Carson and his ridiculous article in the USA Today. And this next segment, I'm talking about Republicans. Well, and actually, let me pivot with this. I think it is reasonable to say that Hillary Clinton is not really going to do much of anything, not only economically, but even for the cause of Black Lives Matter. I've been given Hillary the benefit of the doubt in that conversation she had with Black Lives Matter from Boston, only because I think if we're going to fight for something, we have to know what we're fighting for. Now they've come out with what they're fighting for, and I haven't heard anything else from Hillary Clinton's camp. And that may have been just her one-time interaction with Black Lives Matter, so she could say, "I did it." So, to all of the people who are like, I want to advise them to not endorse anyone because of the political implications and the access to candidates in the future. If I was on their team, and I'm talking about Black Lives Matter, that's what I would advise them. However, from an outside perspective, looking in, you have some candidates that are absolutely not going to do anything for you, who are going to give you lip service. And so it's kind of like, instead of playing political poker, you may be in your best interest to actually find a candidate that's actually going to do something about the same things that you're fighting for. Now, that was just a sidebar conversation, and I wanted to use that to pivot over to Ben Carson and Black Lives Matter, which I'm going to be honest with you folks, I don't even feel like talking about Republicans right now, because the problem isn't Republicans. The problem isn't Donald Trump. There's no way in the world a Donald Trump would become president of the United States if progressives had their thing together. That's it. It doesn't. And I will, forget Ben Carson. I'll do him the next segment. I want to just play this clip of Donald Trump and show you what the alternative is.
Okay, who's
hang on one second. Let me switch this screen over here. I want you to show you what the alternative is. This was on yesterday, and you already saw this in the news, but I just want to point out some key things about it. If I can get it to play on this morning.
Next, yeah, please. Excuse me, sit down. You weren't called. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Go ahead. No, you don't. You haven't been called.
I have the right to ask the question.
Go back to Univision. Go ahead.
You cannot deport 11 million.
Go ahead.
You cannot deport 11 million people. You cannot build a 1900
Go ahead.
wall. You cannot deny citizenship to children.
Sit down, please. You weren't called.
I'm a reporter and I have don't touch me, sir. Don't touch me,
Go.
sir. You cannot touch me.
As they escort him out of the building. All right. So a lot of emphasis has been placed, and I will put my own emphasis on the fact that he told him to go back to Univision. But I want to focus on something else. He was asking a substantive question, asking him about the feasibility of deporting 11 million people, the cost of deporting 11 million people, the administrative requirements, the bureaucracy enhancement. You would have to enlarge ICE, probably 3 or 4 or 5 times the size that it is to handle that level of deportation. So he was asking a substantive question of the Republican front runner. And as soon as anyone asks a substantive question, because no one else has, Donald Trump says, go back to Univision, which is, Donald Trump, everyone knows he's an asshole. Some people like him because he's an asshole. But actually, I like him because he's an asshole. Because I'm an ass, right? But he's a troll on top of that. He knows by saying go back to Univision, he's going to get that much more media coverage. He knows that by saying go back to Univision, that he's going to rev up his racist base. He's going to rev up all those people who are just so angry about everything and don't know where to place that anger, that they shoot that anger towards immigrants and African Americans and minorities in general, and to poor people, even though they are poor. That's the thing that kills me. They are so angry that when they hear someone talk like this, they literally get off on that kind of stuff, figuratively, hopefully not literally. But he knows that by saying this, he's going to shoot up in the polls. And that's the thing. It's like, I titled this section, the Trump paradox, because The media cannot turn away from this idiot. He's a bumbling idiot. He doesn't know any policies. The best thing about Trump is his entertainment factor. And the media cannot turn away from him, but by not turning away from him, they're feeding him. It's like, I rarely subscribe to the notion that you should ignore trolls. I like to confront trolls head on, but I don't see anyone who is actually qualified to challenge Trump head on, except for, and I'm talking about verbally, rhetorically, clapping back, insults, and can go exchange and stoop to the level of Trump without losing yourself. I don't know many people who can do that, who are on that level. Bernie Sanders, I think, can do it. Hillary Clinton maybe, but there's nobody in the Republican end who stands a chance of being able to challenge Trump without coming out with a black eye and broken ribs. And so I normally never subscribe to ignoring trolls, but in this instance, the media created him. And if you look at that interview, if you look at that presser rather, you see that nobody, not a single reporter, protested for their fellow colleague. All of them stayed there. All of them watched Ramos, I believe his name, be escorted out because he was asking a substantive question, and no one said anything. They all just waited for their turn. Maybe I'll get a chance to get a question in with the Trump. It speaks volumes about the state of our media, and it also speaks volumes about the state of the American electorate in general, because the media, they are prisoners to ratings. And apparently America just can't get enough of Donald Trump. So as much as this is a media problem, as much as they should cut him off and no longer pay any attention to him, giving him all of this free media, all of this, he's probably at a couple of $100 million worth of free PR that he has not had to pay a single dime for, and he's the richest candidate in the campaign, right? That's how America works, ladies and gentlemen. So they can't, they're giving him all this free media. They can't cut him off because we want to see it. We live in a reality TV show world where everyone wants to see some drama on television. And I'm not above that. I'm serious. That's one of the reasons I watched the Republican debate, was because I wanted to see how stupid they were going to get. Right. So we're in this Trump paradox where all we need to do is ignore him, and we would realize he has absolutely nothing to offer. But we can't ignore him because we can't take our eyes off the train wreck. We can't take our eyes off of the accident. It's like it's the most disgusting thing to look at, but we just are fixated with it. And the only way in this instance, because no media outlet, hell, MSNBC cut off broadcasting their normal shows to carry Donald Trump live, where he was talking absolutely nothing meaningful. He is the most useless, maybe next to Bobby Jindal. Bobby Jindal might be the only other candidate that's more useless than Donald Trump. But he's as useless as Bobby Jindal, yet we give him all of this mainstream media attention all day long. And the only reason I'm mentioning it is because we're stuck in that paradox, and we have to find a way to get out of it. We have to find a way to break free of feeding the troll. And in this case, ignoring him would work, but the media is so beholden to ratings that they would never ignore Donald Trump. So we need somebody to come out of the ranks of somewhere and put him in his place. I don't know of any other solution with regard to Trump. All right. Ben Carson had an article. Before I go with the ad hominems, let me talk about his article. Ben Carson has an article in the USA Today where he attempts to lecture Black Lives Matter with regard. He opened up talking about their anger being misplaced towards Bernie Sanders. Let me reassure you of this. He is not the least bit concerned with Bernie Sanders. He's just using that as an entry point to get the attention of progressives who were disappointed with Black Lives Matter. Everything that followed in that article, this is the thing I want to say about about Ben Carson, and I'm going to leave it alone, go to break. Everything that followed in the article on USA Today was the same exact rhetoric and the same exact reasoning, if you could give it that title, that Rush Limbaugh and far right-wing conservatives have been saying for the last 30 years. He started off with do I have to talk about him? Let me just say this. Ben Carson is an idiot. Ben Carson was a brilliant neurosurgeon. He has come into the political spectrum and has lost his mind. And actually, I think he sold it. I think he realized that he could not get any play in the Democratic Party because there are a plethora of brilliant African Americans inside of the Democratic Party, the least of which is not President Obama, right? And he realized that he couldn't shine. Where do you go to shine if you're a Black person? You got to go to the Republican Party. And if you're willing to say all of the things that they want to say but can't say because they'd be labeled a racist, well, hell, you'll skyrocket to the top. That's what the entire article was on Tuesday in the USA Today. That's the entire story of Ben Carson. So he has sold his, if he ever had any soul, he has sold it for the sake of notoriety and conservatism. But the article, you know, he offered nothing new. If you're going to try to lecture me, at least bring something to the table that I actually have to think about. He brought all of the talking points that Rush Limbaugh has used over the last 30 years. He's brought all of the talking points that Republicans have said so incessantly that we can break it down and we can debunk it in 140 characters. So if you're going to lecture me, if you're supposed to be this intellectual with the brilliant mind of a neurosurgeon, and you want to lecture me on something, at least bring me something novel. At least bring me something that I have to pause and think about. Don't recite. It's like an Easter speech. Don't recite the same thing that you've heard on Fox News and just wrap it in black skin. That is all Ben Carson has devolved into being. And I'm only addressing it because I've addressed Ben Carson on many occasions, but I'm addressing it because I hate to see someone who is so intelligent in one field actually devolve into a bumbling idiot in another field, which is a requisite now. It's a litmus test for the Republican Party. You have to be a buffoon to get traction in the Republican Party. Just look at Donald Trump. Case in point. All right, folks, I'm going to take one last break. When I come back from this break, I'll take more of your calls and we'll do some other stuff. We'll be back after this.
You're tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Join the conversation, 857-600-0518.
Looking for the right business opportunity? Need the right product, the right marketing plan, and the absolute best training in the world? Well, look no further. The Elite Team. Every leader in time excels. They believe the key ingredients in becoming successful in life and in business are just a keystroke away. Go to www.eliteteamsite.com. That's www.eliteteamsite.com. The Elite Team has a system in place that will move you closer to achieving your goals and dreams. Visit www.eliteteamsite.com. or TonyFlemingEnterprises.com today.
College is important, but it can also be expensive. College Planning Services is a group of educators, administrators, counselors, and other licensed professionals that work together to provide the necessary services, networks, and information to reach students that are serious about getting a college education. College Planning Services partners with financial institutions, corporate sponsors, and other major players in the global market to strategize in building a pool full of information regarding financial aid, scholarships, and funding information to assist students in preparing to access the essential resources to build upon their path to an educational future. Learn more at collegeplanningtoday.com and let us help you start your college career.
Do you want to take your business to the next level? Ultimate Business Solutions provides the support you need to increase your customer base and sell more products and services online. Specializing in graphic arts, web development, and internet marketing, Ultimate Business Solutions creates the face of your business. If you're looking for a custom logo, dynamic website, or popping marketing material, call Ultimate Business Solutions today at 404-704-2197 or visit www.ultimatebizsolutions.com. Ultimate Business Solutions. Let us create your future.
Do you have tax issues, owe back taxes, or need tax relief? Contact L&B Tax Service today. L&B offers you over 15 years of expertise and first-class tax service for individuals, professionals, and business owners. With nationwide service, you can easily find a location near you. Contact one of our tax professionals through our website, lbtaxservice.com. That's www.lbtaxservice.com. L&B Tax Service Incorporated. Tax professionals that you can trust.
You've tuned to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome back. I like to hit all my points. I like to hit everything that I say I'm going to talk about. I was going to talk about David Duke, former Klansman. I say former with quotations because once a Klansman to me, you're always a Klansman. He almost has endorsed Donald Trump. He hasn't officially endorsed Donald Trump, but he says Donald Trump is a top pick of the litter. That should let us know exactly what we're dealing with. Caller, I have a caller from 318. What is your name, comment, and or question? All right. It looks like I may have lost 318. Yeah, I lost 318. So 318, if you want to call back, that's quite all right. So yeah, David Duke, Klansman, former Klansman, politician now, has all but endorsed Donald Trump, Cornel West, while Cornel West has endorsed Bernie Sanders. This is the world that we live in. That's the clear juxtaposition, the clear contrast is what I'm actually looking for. Joe Biden, I didn't get a chance to talk about this the other day. It's important. Joe Biden is a slick man, and I actually like him. He met with Elizabeth Warren and creating speculations of whether or not he's trying to draft her to be his running mate, which is really, really premature in the bigger scheme of things because of the timing of, you really don't pick a candidate until a running mate rather until after the nomination. But it was a slick move because, everyone is still in love with Elizabeth Warren. And if he gets into the race, he would absolutely split Hillary Clinton's vote, making it very possible for Bernie Sanders to win. So I'm not opposed to him getting into the race at all. One, because I like him, and then two, because he actually would split Hillary's vote, which I think is good for everyone involved. Yeah, caller, name and comment or question.
Yes, sir. I'm John from Shreveport, and I posed a question to you the other day on Google Hangout about, do you think the Republican and Democratic or conservative or progressive are more brands now than anything, like kind of like having a football team rather than actual idealistic position. That's what I think is a big problem in politics today. In such as George Bush was speaking, just cheering. Right. Where's the discourse and thought? Critical thinking.
I would agree with you there. There is actually no discourse and thought and differences between the two parties. Whether or not they're a brand, I can go with that because it's like, if you think about it in sports terms, like you mentioned, people who are from a home team, they could have never gone to a game, don't know anyone who's on the team, don't know anyone's ratings or stats, but still call themselves a Red Sox fan, for instance, right? So it's just something that they can easily and readily identify with without having any vested interest in them whatsoever. So from that perspective, I would have to concur that the two parties are nothing more than a brand, and they all are serving the same exact purpose, which is the difficult and the detrimental thing to the country.
Well, I mean, like when let's say you just pick an issue and decide that this issue is conservative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or this issue is progressive. I mean, like abortion, not pro-abortion, but I'm just saying anti-abortion.
Mm-hmm.
Who decides that? How did this become something that's in that brand? And that's all you need to sell to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
well, each party
it creates. It's a lot about. It's also about confirmation bias. That's how people get in their bubble.
Yeah.
So
you've said a lot right there. Those two different things, but you said a lot. So I mean, every party does have their planks, and you do have party members who are actively pushing particular planks. With the Republicans, they have an entire coalition of pro-lifers who insist and would defect from the party if the party ever removed the pro-life plank from their platform. So you do actually have that type of activity happening on a regular basis. The second thing that you said was, what's the last thing that you said?
Confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias. That's the tricky part of it, because even though it's in the platform and it's something that they talk about, people are going there for it. But when you see no motion and no action on it to your benefit, you're really just there for your confirmation. You're just there because your party says that's what they're going to do, whether they do it or not. And that is endemic to both parties. And that's why Black Lives Matter is so active and kicking the Democrats, in the butt, because the Democrats really, seriously, the most damage we've seen done to the African-American community has been the war on crime. And that came by virtue, that was made worse rather by Bill Clinton and his wife, Democrats, right? So the Democrats haven't really done anything to the benefit of African-Americans in the last 30 years, in the last 50 years, probably. So, African-Americans have been going to the Democratic Party almost for the same, in the same manner that pro-lifers have been going to the Republican Party. Neither has been delivering on their empty promises. Now, we also have been voting with it. I give this one caveat. Black people have been voting with the Democratic Party because we would rather vote for them than to ever let the Republicans in, because if it's bad with the Democrats, we know it would be that much worse with the Republicans. So I always say
the lesser of two evils.
The lesser of two evils. Exactly. I always say it like this. We don't vote for the Democrats. We vote against the Republicans. That paradigm is shifting, and it's shifting on two fronts. It's shifting on race issues, but with Bernie Sanders, it's also shifting on economic issues. There are a lot of blue collar Americans, black and white, who are tired of the middle class rhetoric when you're not delivering anything for the middle class. And so we're tired of just going into our bubble simply to hear politicians talk about the middle class, but they're not doing anything to actually build the middle class. And I think that is the distinct difference between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Hillary Clinton is just another politician who's going to talk about the middle class, but is completely in bed with Wall Street. And when the rubber meets the road, she's going to do what's best for Wall Street.
I agree. I believe we're about to have a progressive and populist, really a movement here in our political sphere, whatnot. And that's part of Donald Trump's appeal, is he's been saying a lot of populist things, that's turning ears.
Right.
That's part of his appeal.
And you know what? I can absolutely, I can deal with Donald Trump's populism, even though he's a billionaire. I can deal with all of the things that he says that are even contradictory to his own conservative platform, right? He says things that are definitely pro-middle class, like he said the other day about his hedge fund buddies not paying anything in taxes and they need to pay taxes. I can dig that. Where I jump off with Donald Trump is when he's a complete dick. When he
the same place I jump off from.
You know what I mean? It's like, telling someone to go back to Univision. I want Donald Trump to come at an African American like that. And I want to see, because I've been searching the web. I know he said some things about the girls on the stage, the women on stage with Black Lives Matter in Seattle with Bernie Sanders. But I want to see him make that take that risk with an African-American reporter and Black Twitter and see if he can actually survive that, because he's a bully. And bullies always target people that they feel like they can get away with. And he got away with calling immigrants murderers and rapists. So that was nothing for him to tell the dude yesterday to go back to Univision. So it's like he's a populist, but he's a populist asshole. And at some point, we've got to say, okay, enough is enough. This is enough of the dickery being on national television all day long, every day. I just, it's enough.
I agree, man. And I thank you for being a progressive voice out there. We need more of it, a real progressive, not that fake stuff that some of these, like the Democratic Party's been pretending to be.
Yeah.
We talking about real progressivism, man. I'm glad you're on there, man. I wish you more success.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate the call. Folks, we're a little bit out of time. It looks like I had a little glitch on my YouTube show, but it looks like we're back up. So thank you for your patience. I don't have much more time. Go to facebook.com/The Benjamin Dixon Show. Register for your chance to win a copy of your book, my book, God Is Not a Republican. Follow me on Spreaker. Go over to Spreaker. If you're on YouTube, go to Spreaker. Follow me. Help me get to, we're at 1,550. Help me get to 1,600 by the end of the day. Spreaker, get over here to YouTube and make sure that you subscribe to my channel. I'll have a lot more videos coming out after I send my kids back to school full time in September. When my kids are gone to school full time in September, I'll be able to cut up these videos and I'll do a lot of standalone videos. That's it. Go to patreon.com. Someone gave me a good voicemail message to put the link to Patreon on YouTube. I will get that done. Thank you for the call. Thank you for the message. Everyone, thank you for what you do. I'm going to keep fighting it, because I know we're right. And I know we have better ideas. And when you look and you stack the facts up, conservatism fails. That's why I have no problem saying I'm proud to be a liberal, because conservatism fails. Every single time. Prior to the Great Depression, it was conservatism and laissez-faire economics, capitalism rather, laissez-faire capitalism. That's what led up to the Great Depression, what led up to the Great Recession. 7 years of George W. Bush and his failed economic policies. If we look at the successes in American history, they always came on the back of progressive ideas, economics, and social practices. If we look at the failings in American history, it always came as a result of extreme right-wing economic policies. So I have absolutely no qualm, no hesitation in saying that I'm proud to be a liberal, proud to be a progressive. And if we have anyone in office who is going to say it with any less conviction than I just said, then we need to vote them out, and we need to put in real politicians, real leaders who understand what progressivism really is and understand that we don't have time for watered down conservatives wrapped in the letter D for Democrat. That's all I've got, folks. You guys have a great day.
And until that moment comes, when we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, that I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
That we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
We need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.